Welcome back to the Treeo podcast. At Treeo, we're on a mission to build a future free from heart disease. I'm your host, Isha Nayak, and today we're diving into a story that will inspire and educate anyone passionate about health, especially companies looking to support their employees in preventing chronic disease. I was lucky enough to get an important member of the Treeo community, Oliver, to share his story. He is a health coach, yoga instructor, and someone who truly understands what it takes to transform your health. A few years ago, his own health hit rock bottom. Diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, he knew he had to make big changes. So through dedication and small consistent steps, he found a solution for his diabetes. But his journey didn't end there. Like many who've lived with chronic disease, he's still managing its consequences, including kidney damage. Stories like these are critical for companies to understand because a workplace, whether remote or virtual, plays a huge role in determining an individual's health outcomes. Going the extra mile to support employees on their health journeys reduces absenteeism, lost productivity, and rising healthcare costs. Oliver discussed his journey, unpacked the connection between chronic conditions and the workplace, and shared with us how companies can play a key role in preventing them. Can you take us back to the start of your health journey? So when and how did you first learn that you had type 2 diabetes? First of all, let's start there.
Well, my journey started in 2012. What had happened is in February or March of that year, I got a bad case of pneumonia. And I went into the hospital and I was there for a week. And they had done a ton of blood work, of course. And that's when I learned I had type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and chronic kidney disease.
And what happened after that? So you find all of this out. What was like your first thought, and what were the next moves you made after that?
Well, I was quite surprised, but I was one of those guys that decided he was never going to go to the doctor unless he was really, really, really sick. And so, of course, they had put me on a ton of medication to deal and manage all of these chronic illnesses, or should I say lifestyle diseases that I was diagnosed with. It was quite a shock. All of a sudden going on a bunch of meds made me feel really, really weird. Not normal, not the same, just completely different. So it was a shock. It was just a big shock having to change my lifestyle. Actually, I didn't even change my lifestyle. It was just a shock going on meds.
When did you decide to make lifestyle changes? Like, what was that trigger point for you?
It actually was later on down the road, to be quite honest with you, because I was going to let modern medicine just manage my lifestyle diseases. And then what happened later on that year was quite life-changing to me. So in August of 2012, I was rushed to the hospital. I survived the Widowmaker heart attack, and I found out that I had 4 blockages in my heart. I didn't know what to do, right? So I went to cardiac rehab. I tried to get healthy. I tried every diet known to man, and nothing seemed to be working. And during the next couple of years, what had happened is my A1C levels were increasing. And at one point we topped out at 11.9. And because of that, I started to feel the effects of it. So neuropathy was starting to set in. Both of my feet went numb, and they are completely numb today. I was also diagnosed with diabetic retinopathy, which meant I was literally going blind. My eyes were swelling up. And those symptoms had to be treated with surgery that required them to cauterize the blood vessels in my eyes to stop the fluid from leaking. And then I needed injections to both eyes for about 4 years, 3 or 4 years, every 6 weeks to reduce the swelling. And then I was also diagnosed with sleep apnea. I was also diagnosed with depression. I was also diagnosed with anxiety because of everything that was going on. And on top of that, I ended up gaining 60 or 70 plus pounds after my heart attack, pushing me over the 300-pound mark. Um, and then toward that was and that was about at the end of 2014 when I topped off about 300 plus pounds. At the same time, my first cousin was diagnosed with leukemia for the second time. And unfortunately, he was losing his battle. And for most of December, I remember sitting with him in hospice 3 days a week. And he was just a shell of a man. And he was the strongest guy I knew. And unfortunately, in January of 2015, he passed away from leukemia. And I remember being at his funeral, watching his family, and I remember saying to myself that, listen, this guy, he fought as hard as he could. He had no choice. And here I was given a second chance at life a few years earlier, and I was throwing it all away. And I remember going home that night and sitting in the shower, what felt like 2 hours, just crying, going, this has got to change. And then, funny enough, the next morning, I am watching the news, and the broadcaster says, we have a gentleman on who reversed his type 2 diabetes by switching to a whole food plant-based way of eating. And I watched the story. I was inspired immediately. I ate nothing but oatmeal and spinach and salads for the next week. And it was it was quite difficult because I didn't know what I was doing. And so over the next 8 months, I studied whole food plant-based way of eating, uh, testing out recipes, just learning about the benefits of it. And then finally in August of 2015 is when I switched to a whole food plant-based way of eating.
Can you talk about when you were making those lifestyle changes? You talked about like eating like the same thing for a whole week, but apart from that, what were some things that still stand out to you today that might have been especially difficult about that transition or even surprising about that transition?
So during those 8 months of trial and error, right? So I went through times where I ate nothing but one thing because it was easy to make. And of course, we get sick of that after a while. I also struggled with giving up certain food items like cheese and French fries and the things I was used to eating because my diet before my heart attack was a lot of fast food and processed foods. And those foods are designed to make you want to eat them all the time. And so I was craving that. So I would go through a spell where my breakfast and lunch were fantastic. And then on my drive home, I'd be like, oh, well, I ate great for the first two meals. I can eat something on the way. And I noticed that happening not a lot, not a lot, but it would happen at least once or twice a week. And of course that impacted my health and sabotaged everything that I was doing. And so I had difficulty with that. But as I was testing new recipes out and getting to eat food that I actually liked the taste of, then those cravings were going away because I didn't know how to cook anything. And so that's why I was like craving stuff that really, really tasted good. But once I started finding recipes that started tasting really, really good, those cravings started to go away. And that's okay. That was a learning lesson for me. And that is why when folks are transitioning their way of eating, it's great to test recipes out first and then build up that arsenal that way you can go into this stronger and better and well prepared. And I think that's the key to switching to any type of eating way of eating is test the recipes out first, get a whole bunch of them ready, and then when you want to switch over completely, it's all easy at that point.
For anyone who's listening right now, and we're filming this like basically at the end of 2024, right? And people are maybe going to be setting some very ambitious goals for 2025 very soon. If you had to suggest to them the maybe like the easiest recipe or something for them to try out in this new year that's going to have a big impact on their health that you actually enjoyed eating when you were making that transition, do you have one that you would recommend?
Oh my God. So there's a couple. I love salad. All right. So I'm not going to lie to you. I do love salad, but you've got to make it the right way. Not just all spinach or all this. I use like a leaf, like a multi lettuce type blend, and then you got to have the rainbow of colors in it too. So you got to have a whole bunch of flavors. So onions and carrots and radishes, and you can throw blueberries in there or raspberries, um, but you want the rainbow of colors. And that was something I didn't know how to do at first. I was the guy who was like, okay, it's just like lettuce and some dressing, and of course that was horrible. So the rainbow of colors is great. The other thing I love is chili. I love chili, and there are several plant based chili recipes out there. The one that I use is fantastic, and that's my favorite. Is a plant based chili is my favorite meal, and I ate that a lot when I perfected it. I mean, I ate that a lot because what I would do is I would use that and I would put it on baked potatoes, or I would put it on rice, or I would put it on cauliflower rice. And so my chili was my sauce. It was my main meal. It was everything. And I would make a big 7-quart pot of it every week. And that was my go-to. Even in the summertime, it was my go-to.
I want to talk a little bit about how interconnected different chronic conditions are. So you were talking about when you went to the hospital, you got your lab work done. There were other markers that were elevated as well that are linked to other chronic conditions, right? Can you talk a little bit about your journey with type 2 diabetes? Then you made all these big changes. But can you talk about how that also impacted other parts of your health despite working on that one condition? Because I think that's something a lot of people don't talk about.
So I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, right? Type 2 diabetes is quite damaging to the body. And by the time I found out I had it, I was also diagnosed with stage 3A chronic kidney disease, which is caused by the number one cause of kidney disease is type 2 diabetes. The number two cause of chronic kidney disease is high blood pressure. And here I was diagnosed with both at the same time and diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. Now, I didn't pay much attention to that, but as the years went by, obviously I lost diabetes caused me to lose feeling in my feet. We talked about my eyes. But what happened later on down the road in about 2018, because I have neuropathy, I developed a diabetic ulcer on the bottom of my left foot. Now I didn't know what this was. I saw blood spots on the floor, thinking it was from my dog or somebody else, and then I realized it was me. And I looked at the bottom of my foot, and there was this little hole. I didn't know. I tried to treat it myself. It didn't work out. Went to the hospital. Went to the doctors. They told me it was an ulcer. Gave me antibiotics and a walking boot. That didn't work out well for me. I ended up in the hospital, and they told me it was horribly infected. They admitted me, and then here at 4 o'clock in the morning, a surgeon comes into my room and says, "Sir, this infection is quite scary, and we're worried that um, you may lose part of your leg." And the guy literally said, "We may have to chop off half of your left foot." And that was that was very, very scary. Lucky for me, after the surgery, I woke up and I had all 10 toes, and it went well, but it was a scary, scary thing, because for a lot of people who encounter that, the results are different. You lose limbs and you lose toes, and it's a scary thing. And then later on down the road, because of that surgery, they had to put a PICC line in so I could administer antibiotics to myself so I wouldn't get sepsis, because they were concerned about that. Well, I already have chronic kidney disease. Now I'm adding heavy doses of antibiotics. During that process, my kidney function dropped to 34%. So now I'm at stage 3B, stage 4. But again, I didn't pay much attention to that, right? I thought it was going to bounce back. Well, it really didn't bounce back. And unfortunately, as time went on, we'll fast forward to 2023. I was standing in my kitchen, and all of a sudden my foot pops and breaks, and I had no idea why. I was just standing there, and I went into the podiatrist, and we did X-rays, and he tells me I have a rare bone condition called Charcot foot. And the bones in my foot were, when they broke, they looked like a bag of crushed ice, he said. And Charcot foot is a condition that only folks with type 2 diabetes and neuropathy get. And they're not sure exactly why that happens. And so now I have to be extremely careful. And for a lot of people who get Charcot foot, they have to do reconstructive foot surgery. And reconstructive foot surgery a lot of times leads to, especially with diabetics who don't have great circulation in their feet, usually get infections and ends up with the amputation. And so that was a scary part. Luckily for me, we chose not to do any type of surgery and heal it naturally, and so far has been okay. And then at the end of 2013, I got sick thinking it was COVID. I've gotten COVID a couple of times now. Now, COVID impacts the kidneys as well. And unfortunately, this time around, what happened is I got sick in November, and then in December, I didn't start to feel well, and I started to gain a lot of weight. And then January came around of this year, 2024, and I started to gain a lot of weight. Next thing you know, I have 70 pounds of fluid build up on my body, and I go in and I was told that I have kidney failure. So the type 2 diabetes and the high blood pressure damaged my body so much at the beginning that there was no way I could avoid what has happened to me. And that's the scary part. And that's the scary part. And that's how diabetes, blood pressure, obesity are all tied into some chronic illnesses. And it's a scary thing.
Can you talk about how all of this has impacted other parts of your life, including, in one-on-one conversations that we've had, you've also talked about how this has impacted work, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that also isn't discussed as often as I think it should be, which is how all of this ties into the workplace. Yeah, so if you could share a little bit of that.
These chronic illnesses, the lifestyle diseases and the chronic illnesses, they've impacted me greatly on a personal level and a professional level. On a personal level, you can't put a price tag on this, but the things I put my family through during all of this, I'd never want to do again. My daughters have seen me get loaded into an ambulance twice when they were young. My wife had to take time off of work to sit with me in a hospital several times. Even after my heart attack, I must have been in the hospital at least 4 or 5, 6 times because I thought I was having another heart attack. because I was so scared of what was happening. The impact of what my family had to go through, I would never ever wish on anybody. And it was a horrible experience for all of them. On a professional level, it was just as bad because I had to take so much time off of work for doctor's appointments, for hospital visits, for hospital stays. Um, and my performance at work wasn't the greatest either because I was in recovery. I was dealing with meds that were making me feel sick. It was a tough transition. I believe like one of my jobs I was let go from because my performance just wasn't there anymore, and there was nothing I could do about it because I'm trying to cope with these chronic diseases and the meds to transition to being healthy. So it was very difficult. It was very difficult trying to go to work, and I had a med that would make me just shake constantly. And this happened. This was going on for 3 to 4 months, where constantly I'm just shaking at work, and I don't know what's going on, and I can't concentrate. I can't perform, and it ended up leading to me getting let go from that position. And it was a scary thing, but being unhealthy has an impact everywhere, at home and at work. And I did not feel like the same person I used to be. And it was definitely stressful. And the stress itself didn't help with my conditions. I wish, I wish I knew better and how to take care of myself. But the impact on the professional side is incredible. And as a manager myself, I had employees who were sick, dealing with very similar problems as me, heart conditions and diabetes. And the times they would call into work because they had to deal with doctor's appointments or illnesses, or um, it was eye opening to me because that was me at times, and it impacted us and impacted the work that was being done, and impacted the um, just the individual, the employee, even myself. Just the stress levels were starting to build up, and it was a scary thing.
All of that happening at work in turn just impacts you personally again. So it's just a cycle, right?
Well, absolutely, it impacts you financially, right? Financially, it impacts you. Mentally, it impacts you. It adds up. It's unbelievable.
Did you ever feel like your employer or workplaces in the past could have done more to support your health? And if so, what would that have looked like for you?
I think every workplace could do that, right? Um, you know, I had the heart attack at one employer, and we talk about work life balance, right? But it really should be life work balance. And I don't think we focus enough on making sure people are okay, and that happens through conversations, that happens through programs at work, that happens through lifestyle changes. But I don't think a lot of places really focus on employee health and the life work balance. And I wish more would, and that would be educating people um, in ways of eating, educating people in uh, types of exercise, educating people on how to handle stress, whether that's mindfulness or meditation, some techniques, and making time during the work at the workplace to do this. Not just like, oh, here's a webinar to watch or something, but literally let's do this here. Here, we're gonna cook for you. We're gonna bring in a say a plant based chef, and we're gonna feed you lunch. And this is what food good healthy food tastes like? Because a lot of us say, "Oh, I mean, what do people think when you say food is healthy? It doesn't taste good, right?" But we know that it tastes amazing. But wouldn't it be nice if we brought in a chef to cater lunch instead of going out to a fast food place to cater lunch? And I think that would be very helpful. So that way we can learn about the benefits of healthy food and the tastes of healthy food, or even like doing mindfulness and meditation exercises in the office, not just sending you to a webinar or sending you to something, but having somebody come into the office and just teach you, or even breathing techniques. There are so many things we can do to help people at the office, and we just don't. And there are great benefits to having healthy employees.
That'd be a dream workplace. Oh my gosh, bringing in like someone bringing in a plant-based chef to cook lunch. Oh my gosh. I'd want to work for that company.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Like, well, one of the companies I worked for, they would bring in a yoga instructor once a week. Yeah, and they would allow employees to go and take yoga at lunchtime. Yeah, but yeah, wouldn't it be great if instead of catering from McDonald's or a pizza place, that they brought in a plant-based chef to cook or bring in meals to say, hey, this is what plant-based tastes like. This is what healthy tastes like. Then that's the thing that turns people off is, again, oh, I don't want to eat broccoli and cauliflower. Well, it's more than just broccoli and cauliflower, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Earlier intervention, kind of like what Trio offers. How do you think something like that could have changed your life or health outcomes had you had that enter your life, earlier in the timeline?
This is easy. Like if I had something like Trio in my life at the beginning, I would have had blood work done, and I would have known that I've had these chronic or these lifestyle diseases before I actually um, got hit hard with them. Right? I think the biggest problem that we encounter today is people just don't go to the doctor, and we're afraid to find out results. Right? And so what happens is we go to the doctor. If we do go to the doctor, we get results, and then we're told, okay, well, you need to work on them, and then we don't know how to work on them. That's the disconnect, right? We get told that we're sick, but then we don't know how to fix it. We get give it we're given meds. Where if I had a doctor working with, say, a health coach or nutritionist that would help me get healthy, that would be a lot easier. But a lot of folks will avoid going to the doctor because they don't want to hear the results because they're afraid they'll find something. And if they do find something when they go, they don't know how to deal with it. And so something like Treeo, where you're bridging that gap between doctor and patient. Oh my God, I I wouldn't have to go to dialysis 3 days a week. I wouldn't have to. I wouldn't have to be going looking for a brand new kidney. Um, I'd be able to feel grass and sand on my feet. You know, I'd be able to run. I'd be able to do a lot of things if I would have just gone to the doctor. But not only that, but gone to some place where I could get taken care of and guided along the way to make things easier on me. And I don't regret it, right? I don't regret it because, life has done a lot of things for me, but I don't want other people to go through the things I have gone through. And simply teaming up with an organization to help you bridge that gap and make life and getting healthier easier. Oh, I wish I had that in 2012. I wish I had that after my heart attack. I wish I had that. I wish I learned that quickly, but it took me 3 years to figure this out. 2 years of being unhealthy, and then 8 months of literally learning how to do this by myself. That's a long time when when somebody can just help you right away. and start that transition and start that journey. And I wish I had that.
What would you say to companies that might underestimate the impact of chronic disease on their workforce?
Oh yeah, this is one thing I wish they knew what people go through on a chronic illness. The minute you're diagnosed with a chronic illness, that impacts, I can tell you just from speaking to hundreds and hundreds of folks that are on dialysis or have cancer or have lupus or have other chronic diseases. The mental toll that it takes on a person is huge. And when that happens, they stop performing. Simple as that. And then they start to think that they're not good enough. And then when you're at the workplace, you're not doing good. Um, you're worried that you're going to lose your job. You're worried that you're not performing up to par. It is a huge thing. It is a huge thing. Chronic illness really just does a number on a lot of people. Um, and in the workplace, you start to miss work. You miss work because you have doctor's appointments. Dialysis patients. I mean, you're in a chair 3 days a week for 3.5 to 4 hours. Well, that impacts when you can go to work. And then after a dialysis treatment, a lot of people can't work. They're sick, they're tired, and that impacts what happens. And so people try to do work, but they can't do it at 100%. Um, it's at the end of all of it, production is much lower, quality of output is much lower, um, and just the employee themselves, they just don't feel like they can do much more, and they end up either losing their job or quitting and moving on. And when you do that, you have to retrain new people to replace those folks, and we know the cost of that as well. So yeah, chronic illness is, um, the cost of that is unbelievable. And just to get people, if we can get people healthier and help them out, it'll be such a great thing, um, before it happens. So chronic illnesses have a huge impact on the workplace, for sure.
And just to reiterate for anyone who might have missed this earlier, Oliver's saying this as someone who has experienced being a manager and having the conditions himself that have impacted his work, and managing people who've also been going through um you know chronic health challenges. So this is really coming from someone who's seen all angles of the problem and how it impacts people's ability to work. And like we said earlier, that just goes on to impact every single area of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, after I had my heart attack and I was put on meds, I was not at 100%. Um, Diabetes made me foggy, made me, without even knowing that I had these symptoms. Right? I look back, and it impacted me at several jobs. Um, Once I got healthy, I felt fantastic. But then, of course, I had a foot surgery. That I was literally off of my feet for 6 months. That's an impact right there. I couldn't work for 6 months. I couldn't work for 6 months, right? And then I break my foot, and I'm non-weight bearing for 8 months. Sure, I was working from home, but let me tell you, I was tired. I couldn't do anything. It was impacting my day to day at work. Um, and then, of course, dialysis. I mean, I'm not working today. It's difficult. It's difficult for a lot of dialysis patients to work because of what happens. So, yeah, I've seen it all. I've felt it all. I've felt I've been concerned about my performance at work. It impacted me in every single way. So I can talk about it from my perspective and then from other people's perspective, for sure.
Having experienced all of that, if you were going to be the person designing the perfect workplace wellness program, right, to support you, any of the employees you've managed experiencing these things, what would that include? We talked about some of these things earlier, like what would be ideal for prevention, but I guess this could also include ways to better support people who are already, dealing with things.
For sure, for sure. So I would approach this a couple of ways. One, this has to start from the top down in an organization, right? I think every manager needs to be trained in ways to recognize when an employee is not performing, not performing because of stresses, outside factors, illnesses, and talking to them about it, but also really just getting to know an employee more than just from a boss employee level, like really getting to know them, and understanding their life and their lifestyle, and understanding where their stresses are coming from, and just being a good person. But I also think that we have to understand how to treat that. We're not therapists, right? We're not providing therapy, but life coaching is very important. Health coaching is very important, and you don't need to be a nutritionist or any of that stuff. We just have to understand, what is happening with the employee. I think that's a huge start. When I was managing, a lot of times I would even ask my employee if they wanted to start off our one-on-ones with just a breathing or grounding technique, just to bring them back and de-stress for just a little bit. And a lot of them would say, yeah, they wanted that. And there are techniques that we can teach managers to help people with anxiety and stress and the common things. I think that's important. Uh, as an organization, though, like again, we talked about wellness programs, but those wellness programs have to be more engaging, right? Get people off of their chairs, out of their desks, bring them into a conference room, and let's talk about this, and let's practice this, and let's do these exercises. I've been at a lot of organizations that say, "Oh yeah, here's a great wellness program. Call 1-800 this, or sign up for this webinar or that," and that's great. And that's fine. It's great to have that info, but face to face, stop what you're doing. I care about you. I want to make sure that you're healthy. This means a lot to me. So we're going to pull you away from work for an hour or 2 hours. Don't worry, the work will get done. But we care about you. But I would love to find a company that says we care about you and makes the effort with their wellness programs, not just here's a piece of paper, here's a pamphlet, here's a brochure. I think that would be huge. That would be key. If they and even if they've just partnered with an organization that could help them get there, right? Because why reinvent the wheel? If there's somebody like Treeo that knows how to do this, then let's bring them in. Let's bring them in, but we need to show our employees that we care and that we're serious about this, and that we know that a healthy employee is a better employee, where a sick employee is tough. It's tough on them. It's tough on the organization, and it ends up costing insurance companies and companies more with unhealthy employees. So why wouldn't I spend the money? Why wouldn't I invest in my employees by offering effective wellness programs in the office? And I wish I saw more of that. And we don't because we think that, well, we can't pull somebody away for an hour or 2 hours of work, but 2 hours of hardcore work, 3 hours of hardcore work and stress breaks a person down. And when they get sick, then what happens? Then the cost then the cost is much more. So I wish we would invest more in our wellness programs and our people. That would be amazing.
Thank you so much for being so open in sharing all of this because I'm hoping that for anybody listening, I'm sure that they're going to be able to connect to at least some part of your personal story, but even in regards to everything employer related or how that ends up coming back to, impact your personal life, because it does. It's all tied in together. And you said you wish we would start to focus more on life work balance and what that really means, and employers really taking a step in the right direction to support people in the way that they should be, because again, everything is connected.
I loved managing people because I care about them as people first, employees second, and I wish more people were like that. I wish we had more bosses like that.
Today's conversation has been a powerful reminder that chronic disease isn't just an individual challenge, it's a workforce challenge and ultimately a societal one. Reversing type 2 diabetes and preventing heart disease is possible, but it requires early intervention and lifestyle changes, which is where Treeo comes in. So to our listeners, if you're an HR leader or decision maker, this episode is your call to action. Prevention works, and it benefits not just your employees, but your entire organization. Oliver, thank you for sharing your story and for inspiring us all to think bigger about what's possible when we tackle chronic disease early. We'll see you next time as we continue to explore how we can create a healthier, heart-strong world together. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast.